Hi, I'm Weiser Cornell, and welcome to a webinar on focusing and the more. We have an hour together. We're going to take you through some exercises. Basically, what we're talking about in focusing and the more is that sense of being able to experience our belongingness in something larger than ourselves. And I'm so grateful to be joined today by my good friend and colleague, Peter Gill. Hi, Peter.
Hi Anne. Hi, everyone. Welcome to you all.
Peter has a lot of interest, training, and experience in this realm of focusing in the more. He'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. I wanted to start by sharing some of my own interest and connection in focusing in the more. It's my own upbringing left me, my religious spiritual upbringing as a child left me hungry for a sense of connection that I didn't find in the teachings of the religion that I was taken to by my family. And as I learned focusing itself, an inner sense of rightness, made me also realize that there was something missing for me. There was a kind of a hunger, a longing to feel my own connectedness to what was larger than me. And I spent a whole summer when I was 21 really wanting to seek and find that sense of that interconnectedness and wholeness. And just by paying attention to moment by moment to the experiences that were available to me, to the sights, the sounds, the smells, and to my own feelings all around me, I began to get a larger sense of interconnectedness. And in my life, I've followed that track as I've traveled to other countries, visited sacred sites, places where a kind of energy gathers that we can feel. So I'm very excited and curious about the first time that I've really created a webinar and so on this topic. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you all today. And what about you, Peter? What's been your path to getting here, or your reason for interest in this area, or anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. So yeah, a little bit about my background. So I grew up in an atheist family. There was no religion present really. It was just a kind of something on the periphery of our life. But it wasn't until in my 20s I came across Buddhism, and that had an immediately strong resonance with me. I sort of dived into it completely, really. For 15 years, I lived in Buddhist kind of communities and worked in situations surrounded by that sort of practice. Very religiously meditated every day. I took a Buddhist name. Some people may even know that name from many years ago. So that was kind of my first immersion, really, in that kind of world. But during that whole process, I discovered focusing. And it was like a kind of missing piece dropped into my life in many ways, but in particular in this dimension as well. It was like I could make a bridge really between what was being offered to me in terms of ideas and concepts and sort of practices and sort of my lived experience. So an example of this might be a kind of a loving kindness meditation, which sounds like a great idea, but it's actually very hard to do. But focusing made me helped me make the connection. I could actually feel it happening in the practices I was doing, and it's like I say, it bridged those things together. So that was one piece in which it worked together. Then a few years ago, I kind of sensed, with the help of focusing, really, that community wasn't really working for me anymore. It wasn't a sort of a spiritual home, even though I'd gotten so much from it. And it was a big process leaving that whole family, if you like. And focusing really guided me through that process completely. And I was called to something deeper, really, called to something less formal, maybe something more embodied, something more embedded in nature. So that's kind of where I'm ending up, really exploring a kind of, my sense of the more really through the connection to the natural world, and a kind of that bigger system that we call the sort of natural world that is way more than we can ever put into words. Yeah, and I'll be saying more about this in the course too. But all along, I've had this sense in my focusing sessions that it's been a doorway to many things, focusing, but a doorway to healing and transformation, but also a doorway to this bigger dimension, the more. And when this course came up, I saw Anne was thinking about teaching and planning. I was like, yes, something in me, there's a big yes inside, and I love that it's called the more, that it's undefined. That's really important to me. That I think what Anne mentioned too about what was presented to me as a child, as growing up in terms of spirituality, didn't match my experience, so there was a living thing inside of me and there was something outside, and they didn't meet until later on. And then here we are, here with this course many years later, with our lived experience meeting something more. So I'm very happy to be here exploring this topic. It means a lot to me, and really
Wonderful.
Glad to be here. Yeah, thank you, Anne.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, our whole intention for this webinar is to give you as much as possible of the experiences that have been exciting for us as a kind of connection to that sense of the more. We respect, of course, each person's road, each person's way is your own way, but that completely comes from focusing, that honoring and that trust in the inner sensing of the way. But Gene Genlin, who's the father of focusing, talked about the bigger system. And he even said that, let me find this quote here. Yeah, your physically felt body is in fact part of a gigantic system of here and other places, now and other times, you and other people, in fact, the whole universe. And if I were editing that quote for him today or writing my own version of it, I would say not only you and other people, but you, me, and all of life. And even things that we don't ordinarily think of as having life, like mountains and rivers and oceans. So we're going to start right away doing an exercise that we can all experience in our own ways. And let me just say, by the way, we're on Zoom together. It's a webinar. You see me and Peter. We don't see you. We see your names. But that's how webinars work. You'll be able to communicate mainly to us using the chat. And when you type in the chat, do make a choice. You can see there's a choice right above the place you tap, you type. Make a choice to send your chat to panelists and attendees. If it stays just going to panelists, then only me and Peter see it and not the rest of the group. So Peter's going to take us through our first exercise. So we plunge into the experiential here immediately. And this will be an exercise on being part of something larger and having your own felt experience of the larger world. All right?
Thanks, Anne. Thank you.
Here we go.
Okay. So this will take about 10 minutes. So with that in mind, get yourself comfortable, in a place and posture that you can spend time in for that long. A couple of things before to say that everything I offer is an invitation. If they're prompts, they're not demands. If it doesn't fit, just let it go. Let my mind just go over your head or adapt it. Maybe my pace might be quicker than your pace, and that's okay. Just stay with what works for you. Okay. Good. So you could have your eyes open or eyes closed during this. Either is fine. Beginning just to get a sense of your body. and particularly as it's supported in the space you're in. Sense whatever is beneath you, behind you. Let it hold your body. Let it support you. You might, within that sense, different parts of your body, just noticing them with your awareness. Sensing your feet, your legs, pelvis. Sensing your torso, your middle of your body, and your head and face. Just noticing as it is. Nothing has to be happening, just sensing your body. And you might include in that an awareness really of your inner landscape, any feelings or thoughts, emotions that might be present with you right now. Maybe there are things calling to you, issues in your life or things you're already present with. Let them be there. Everything is welcome. Even if you're finding it hard to notice and hard to be present, that's welcome too. And then turning your awareness back again to what supports your body. And sense beneath that, wherever you are, somewhere beneath you, beneath the building you're in and the structures that hold you, beneath that is the earth, the land, soil and rock. And all of that is part of a bigger, broader physical landscape around you. So notice, or if you like, imagine that. Maybe it might be new to you, maybe you don't know it so well, or maybe it's very familiar. Either way, you have some sense of it in your body. A sense of being in a bigger physical landscape. So noticing yourself as part of that, as being held by that even, that bigger landscape, always there. And then you might imagine or sense the water around you in the form of streams or rivers, lakes, maybe ocean, whatever's near you. Sort of picture it in your memory or in your imagination. No matter where you are, water is never far away. And it's in there in all the living things around you. And you might reflect how that waters that feed the landscape and all the living things around you also feed you. That water sustains you. That we're all part of that cycle of cloud and rain and river and sea. See if you can sense something of that inside right now, even just sensing your blood, the kind of water inside of you, if you like. The fluidity of your body. Sense or imagine that kind of watery quality within the flow. And then again, inviting you to picture or sense that landscape around you and all the living things in it. Even if you're in a city not far from there, there'll be, well, there's natural life in the city and beyond it too. Recall or imagine those landscapes, whatever's near you, woods, forests, grasslands, and all that might be living in it, birds and mammals and insects. And know that everything you live on, all the food that sustains you, and always has sustained you in some way, comes from that living matrix, that living system, and plants and animals, and their life in turn comes from the earth. That everything you live on, everything that we depend on comes from this earth and from the water and soil and air and the sun. Without those, none of us would be here. Sense what comes in your body when you take that in. Take in your connection, your interdependence with those things, with water and air and sun and soil. Sense the life in you, the aliveness in you is the same as the aliveness in all the living things around you. And the same too with the air you're breathing. That breath that every moment keeps us alive. How it too was once wind blowing across prairies or mountains, across oceans. How it came once from trees and other living organisms. How it was breathed many times and will be. Sense your breath as part of a bigger system. So with all of this, it's an invitation to sense yourself as part of the web of life, woven into it, inseparable from it. You belong here just as much as the fox or the crow or the mountain or the lake or each other. And then in these last minute or so, you might also include other things I haven't mentioned that are part of your sense of the more spirits or God or guides or whoever it comes to you, whoever it is in your life. If you want to include that, also allow that to be present, if you like, with us. So it's you here with all of the natural world, the web of life, and all of that, all of what else might be there in your sense of it. And then gently letting your awareness kind of return more to this particular moment with each other on this webinar. Open your eyes if they've been closed. Look around. Okay.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm gonna just say a little how that was for me, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I really felt the lack of division between me and the rest of what is the living world. And I was feeling so deeply touched by that, realizing how often I feel myself separate. And then a little later you used the word inseparable.
Nice.
But it really, how lovely it was to go through earth and air and water and really be invited to feel and food as well, I think. And really feel the cycle or the wholeness of, and my hands want to move because there was some feeling of this isn't something that's just fixed and still and just it's like there's some kind of movement in it all, like the movement of the breath. I can really feel how my breath itself is always telling me about that interconnectedness. So I wonder if other people would like to tell us about how your experience was in the chat. And remember to select all panelists and attendees before you type in the chat. And we're going to invite our assistant, Paula Gamble Grant, to talk. Hi, Paula.
Hey there.
And how was that exercise for you? Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah. Well, I got stuck on the water because right now I can hear the rain. I can hear, we have an underground spring in our yard that goes into a pond that flows down to a creek that goes into a nearby river. And so I was very, very aware of the flow of water. And then I could feel this flow in me. And this sense of, oh my goodness, this water knows how to flow. It's not being forced to flow. It just goes. It just moves forward in the ways it's meant to. And I could feel this little part in me. It was sort of in my heart space that just felt this rest, that all would be well. All will flow the way as it's meant to flow. And I could feel that because I could literally hear the water. There's a lot of it in the air and on the ground right now where I'm at. So it was beautiful. And I just stayed with water. I know you went on, Peter, but you gave me
Mm.
permission to. So
Yeah, good.
I was there.
Yeah. What a good modeling that, you know, we want everybody to use these exercises in the way that works for you. And I love the phrase, the water knows how to flow.
Yeah, lovely.
Great. Seeing in the chat, Carolyn says, for me, it was the inclusion of the march of ancestors who witnessed these mountains, forests, landscapes differently in different times. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And Helen writes, a sense of connectedness and expansion that was without boundaries, and a contrast to the current restrictions.
Yeah.
Feeling that.
Great.
Christina writes, I connected to the image of water and felt a strong connection to my own creativity. Sure. Yeah. And Lily writes, I found myself remembering my times on a trail near the source of the Colorado River beneath the Never Summer mountain range. Oh, what a great name.
Lovely, yeah.
A great name. With the moose and the otter and all the stillness, silence, and beauty. Oh, thank you, Lily, for sharing that with us. Yeah. And Ina writes, sitting in a city, I realized all the living things around me, all the mice and sleeping birds. And I felt so connected and whole. Wonderful. Great. Lisa writes, gratitude to be part of such a beautiful web of interconnectedness. Wow. Well, thank you. We're not going to read all of these, but you can read them. And I'm really grateful that people are sharing what came for you. Let's say a little about what else, Paula and Peter and I will say a little about what else comes to us around this whole sense of focusing in the more. I was saying that Eugene Gendlin used to use the phrase, the bigger system. And for him, what he meant by the bigger system was clearly something that is itself alive. Not just the name for everything altogether, but there's an aliveness to the whole of us. And he would even say things like, well, we can ask the bigger system. And this reminds me of what's known as the Gaia Hypothesis, which I understand is the idea that the earth itself is a living organism. What else, Peter and Paula, do we think about, or our ideas around this idea of the more wholeness? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a quote from a Franciscan scholar, Bonaventure. He said that the more, or God, and later someone said nature, is an infinite sphere whose center is nowhere and whose circumference is everywhere. And I just love that, because there's another Franciscan idea that God is infused in a blade of grass and beyond all I can ask and imagine, like cosmically beyond. And so I just love, from little to large, uncontainable is a way. And then another one I really love is just the image of the wedding feast. All are welcome to the table. There's a place for everyone. It's so non-discriminating, but the invitation is to come and partake. And I love that sense of invitation. I think, Peter, you used that word a lot as well, that there's invitation to, the more is always inviting to more.
Nice. The more is inviting to more. Yes. We also have the focusing teachers, Edwin Mcmahon and Peter Campbell, who wrote a wonderful book called Biospirituality. I've learned a lot from their view of the more. One quote from them is, each of us needs to develop our own unique body sense for being part of something greater than ourselves. That's a nice one.
Mm.
Sometimes I call this, what is larger? Let's check in with what is larger. Let's pause and sense into what is larger. Oh, but another thing Gene Genlin said about this bigger system is that he said about himself, I am in it. In other words, I grew up learning, it seemed that the image of God that I had when I was growing up was of something far away and separate from me. I didn't hear anybody in my upbringing talk about me being a part of God. Now that does belong somewhere in the Christian tradition, doesn't it, Paula?
Absolutely, yeah.
But,
I think there's a I am a part of something bigger, but that something bigger is in me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So it's not an either or. It's not an external in. It's also an internal out. And there's like your exercise, Peter. I feel like the streams lead and help me, and I help the streams.
Mm.
There's the both and. God in me, God around me, beneath me, or the more is everywhere.
Yeah, there you go. Now I'm mentioning the Christian tradition just because that's my personal childhood tradition, but we've been exploring many traditions. Peter brings in Buddhism. I've been talking to people. We have the Judaic tradition, even in and there it's completely obvious that Native American spirituality considers nature, everything in nature, everything that exists, to be our relatives. These are our brothers and sisters and our cousins. And Islam has these concepts as well, if you dig into it, if you sink into it. So and also we don't need a religious tradition. We can find these experiences directly through being embodied. I'm just finding this quote from Genlin about I am in it. Yeah, he says, I'm not differentiated from the bigger system. That's like that feeling of not being separated from it. I was feeling during your exercise, Peter. Yeah, I'm not differentiated from it. And Donna writes in the chat, I'm wondering about the cosmos. There are current astronomy events going on, impacting our individual experience on the world. Do they? Of course. This doesn't stop at a certain point. It goes all the way out, I would think. Yeah. And then Donna's question is, how do we communicate and express and process what is larger as an embodied experience? Well, we're going to go through an exercise that will include some of that. So let's just see if there's more people want to bring up in the chat or more that my friends and I want to say. We are talking a lot about different names for the bigger system, different concepts about us. I once watched an interview with Joseph Campbell where he called it that which moves us. And
could I share something here, Anne?
That would be a great moment for you to do that, Peter.
I didn't plan this, but it's a quote from Stephen Levine. So his book, An Exploration of Healing into Life and Death, and it's a quote that helped me make that move to that family. I said I left my religious family into a bigger sense of it, but also it really fits with what you're talking about. And
wonderful.
So yeah, so he says, the only method that works is the Braille method. We just have to feel our way along from moment to moment to what we need, to what's appropriate for us. Trust yourself. You shouldn't believe a word we say. You're just abusing yourself if you give yourself away in that manner. If something that is said resonates with your heart, how do you think you know? I mean, if you hear someone speaking and you say, wow, they've really got it. How do you know if they've got it? It's because you are the truth. When the truth is spoken, it resonates with that place inside of you. That is truth. Trust that place. That is the teacher. Don't be a Buddhist. Don't be a Hindu. Don't be a Christian, in all of those inverted commas. Be a human being on their way to immensity. So be a human being on their way to immensity.
Don't believe a word we say. I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Imploring
So
people
nice.
to really check with their own experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, one of the dichotomies that we see going on, often I see going on, is that I may find a name for something that I experience, but then the name that I've found somehow begins to distance me from the experience. And that's why it's, I think, important to have a lot of different names, a lot of different phrases, and then continually let them go. And as in Peter's quote, keep coming back to the felt experience of what's true and live that, whatever it is. And that's not such an easy way to live. It's a bit easier to find some concepts and then don't ever revisit them, don't ever check them. And yet this is the what we are is members of this flow that's continually on its way to what's next. You gave us that quote in the chat.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat. Someone else.
Great.
I don't know exactly where it is in the book, but you can probably find it.
Lovely. Now, Margaret wrote in the chat, does one need to have gone through a certain amount of healing of one's trauma in order to have them more available? I think there's a dance between our compassion for the hurt, traumatized places inside us and our ability to receive support from and love and compassion from what is larger than us. And I think that's a great lead-in to the exercise that I'm about to do, our second exercise for today. Because we're interested in being for that which is inside us, a nurturing environment that is similar to or draws on the same nurturing environment that we might be receiving, we are receiving, we just maybe aren't sure we know that, from what is outside us. So let's do an exercise. All right, here we go. This will be about 10 minutes as well. So inviting you to settle into your body more and more. Feeling your body present here and now. Feeling your body's touch on what you're touching. Wherever your feet are touching, wherever your seat is touching, your back. See if you'd like to become aware that what supports you is even more than the physical chair, the floor, the earth. Perhaps even remembering what came in the earlier exercise, your sense of that larger world, larger system that you belong in, that you're a part of. And right now, if you like, you can invite the sense of being supported by that, resting into it. Including the inner awareness of your body, your throat, chest, stomach, and belly. And I want to awaken the possibility that there might be something in you that, what shall we say, doesn't want to be in touch with what's larger, feels doubtful about that, feels what we could call resistant or blocked to feeling what is larger. This might not be true of all of you. So if not, that's fine. But what if there's something in you, perhaps something that feels a certain way, curled up or hid or hiding or something like that, that sort of says, nah, I don't believe it, or no, I'm too hurt for that, or no, it doesn't help me any, something like that. Just pausing to let you sense if there is something like that for you. And be your larger self that you may have accessed in the earlier exercise, your larger self that belongs in and is a member of that larger world, or simply your larger self sitting here right now. Feeling your whole body and turning toward that part of you, if there is one, that feels doubting or resistant or curled up or hurt. And let it know that it's okay to be just the way it is. In fact, what I'm suggesting is really that you enfold it in a kind of love. That it doesn't have to change. That we trust that it's the way it is for an understandable reason, even if we don't know what that is. And this part of you that is itself resisting can keep on doing that. It doesn't have to change. And yet from the bigger point of view, it does belong here too. It is beloved. It is welcome. Even if it doesn't let that in or doesn't know that. All of that is okay. You might let a gentle hand move to the place in your body where you might be feeling something curled up or hiding or not ready yet, or, and hello, I'm with you. And might it be possible to become aware that as I send compassion and love to what's inside me, smaller than me, in that same way, I am being told by what's larger than me, you're okay. you can be the way you are. You are beloved. Too often, people experience what seem to be larger voices saying, you're not okay. You need to get better. You need to shape up somehow. I don't think those are larger voices. I think those are parts of you that are worried. And they too can be turned toward with a compassionate hello. Hello, I know you're there. And we may need to move back and forth between our compassion for what's inside us and our ability to receive compassion from what's larger than us. But whichever one is possible right now, even a little bit. I can be held with compassion and the sense of belonging and the sense of being okay the way I am. I can be held by what is larger than me. Like I'm sitting on the lap of what is larger than me. And then my own lap can hold the hurt parts of me, the younger parts of me, the resentful or refusing or doubting parts of me. They're welcome. They don't have to change. They can be here. So we'll bring this exercise to a gentle completion. Understanding that whatever happened for you is fine. It's just what happened. And pausing to sense what it is you'd like to remember from this exercise, perhaps even return to at another time. Thanking your body, and what else would you like to thank? Letting gratitude blossom in whatever direction feels right. And letting awareness expand so you feel the room around you again. And letting your eyes come naturally open when that feels right. And here we are. Love to hear how that went for people, or any comments or even questions that you might have about anything we're saying today. Prashama writes that that image worked well, of holding the parts exactly as they are, as the bigger something holds all of me. Ooh, I love the phrase, the bigger something. I hadn't quite had that one before. Yeah. Peter, anything you'd like to share?
I loved it. I was immediately drawn to this sense of support, the word support at the beginning. When you said support, and of course, normally I think of that in terms of the chair, and then you immediately took it, oh yeah, I'm supported. Like I really felt it very strongly, and a lot of gratitude came from that. And especially in this time, like my life now, and many of us in the UK are in lockdown, and we feel a bit disconnected maybe, but I feel, yeah, so much is supporting me. So it was lovely. And yeah, and also the word beloved, I love that word. Belonging and beloved is beautiful words, so much meaning in them.
It just came. I hadn't planned even to use that word.
Right, yeah.
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 I am beloved.
Lovely.
Right.
Exactly.
This is beloved.
Very, yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Wow. Steve writes grateful for the word beloved too.
Mm.
I'm glad you're here, Steve. I'm glad you like that. Yeah. Christina writes, the image of the parts that resisted and weren't ready didn't change. No, they don't have to. But when I accepted them as they are, I changed. And that made all the difference to my experience. Yeah. And Kate writes, that felt to me like a reunion or a gathering of old friends, support and companionship. And BJ, that's a quote you're telling us. We are accepted in the beloved. Nice. And Rebecca writes, coming back felt more like contracting. And I said, right, I said at the end, expand your awareness to the room around you. And no, you're saying that felt like contracting rather than expanding. That makes sense. I might need to change that language. I remember, Peter, in your exercise, you didn't say it that way. You actually talked more about becoming aware in a more ordinary way, something like that.
Yeah, it's hard to do that transition.
I remember.
Yeah.
We'll work with that. Yeah. Let's see. Sandra writes, that worked for me. I often struggle with connecting to a higher self. I feel a lack of support in life, and the image of holding and being held really worked, and letting the struggle be accepted and held. Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear it. And there's a part that curls up every time religion or God is mentioned as a bigger thing. Okay, lovely. Definitely want to make room for that. And because whatever this is that we're talking about, it's inclusive. There isn't anybody or anything sent away into the exile darkness. Somehow everything's included. Hans-Jürg, oh, I'm so glad you're here. Something in me knows and feels that there is a greater whole in which I am embedded, but it needs a special mood to perceive it. Nice, yes, that may be. Right, and Mary writes, I sensed something in me that felt angry about how as a female religions and theology has been such a letdown, and something in me that felt unsure about this. And it was wonderful to allow those parts to be just as they are, and that something more was also allowing them to be just as they are. Wonderful, wonderful. Question from Laura in the chat. How does this practice work with your meditation practice?
When you say practice, do you mean practice of focusing, I'm assuming, or when you say how does this practice work?
Yeah,
Could I ask? Yeah,
can
I ask Laura what that meant?
Laura, please say more what you mean by this practice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, okay, thank you. Good. For me, focusing practice really is my main thing. I don't meditate formally anymore. I actually would like to, but if I had the time. I have a family and busy life. So I find it hard to make time for it. But focusing, I have lots of focusing in my life and in my day, and some of it is this kind of opening. It's not always about problems and issues. So it feels it's not the same, but it fulfills me strongly at the moment. So that's what I could say to that. I mean, there's things on my website actually about how these two practices do meet together. So yeah.
Would you put your website in the chat?
I will,
that would be great. What else do we want to say in the last minutes while we're together? What we've been talking about today is the experience of what is larger. And the basic message we want to give to you is that whatever this is that is larger, we want to invite an experience of it and explore with you today what it's like to experience the interconnectedness, the fabric of interconnectedness of all that's alive. And that felt experience is accessible, and that there's a difference between following what someone else tells us, however well-meaning, and sourcing the more in our own felt experience. And we really wanted to spend an hour sharing with you some of the ways of sourcing the more and underline the value of doing that. And that great quote you shared, Peter, was wonderful. Paula, would you like to add anything as we finish today?
Yeah, mostly just thank you, everyone, whether you shared in the chat or not, for your presence, for your leaning into what is here and sitting with what is here in you. And so it's so beautiful, so tender. And I'm very much, for those going on, looking forward to growing together in that way. Just feel honored to be here with all of you. Thank you for opening your hearts to this. And it's beautiful. Thank you.
It really is something that I need in these times more than ever. And that's why I wanted to create experiences like this one in the webinar today. And thank you for those writing in the chat. Deborah writes, it's a lovely way to start the new year, reconnecting with the whole. Nice to see you here, Deborah. Wonderful. Great. Thanks for the thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
well,
you.
That will do it. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here.